Captain, we have them! We've established Transporter Lock, the Star Trek Discovery podcast. Join Ken and Sabriel each week as they explore strange new episodes, seek out new plots and new characters, and boldly go where no podcast has gone before.
Hello and welcome to Transporter Lock episode number 43 for October 29. I'm your co-host, Chief Engineer Ken Gagney.
And I'm Captain Sabriel Maston.
Yes, welcome to another season of Short Treks. Captain, are you ready to sail?
I am, and this season kind of sprung up on me.
I know, right? I did not realize that the fifth total short trek ever, which is the first one of this season, called Q&A, had aired until 3 days after it did so. I don't know if I was expecting some sort of an email notification or just somebody to tell me, but yeah, I'm like, oh, I missed this. It came out.
Yeah, it came out during Star Trek, or was it New York Comic Con or something like that? And I saw people talking about a short trek. I'm like, oh, they must have previewed it or something over at the con. There's no way we can watch it at home. If you halfway through the week later, I'm like, oh. And then I was like, oh, there's a second one.
Yeah, a lot came out of that convention. There was a new trailer for Picard. There was a new trailer for season 3 of Discovery. And as you just said, 5 days after the first short trek, another short trek came out. I thought maybe they were spacing them out, but apparently not in this one particular case. So we are a little behind in our recording. We're going to do just Q&A today, which debuted on October 5th, 2019. Sound good?
Yeah, that'd be
awesome.
Great.
So I knew nothing about this going in. I suspected from the title, of course, that we would see the infamous recurring villain Q show up, and that was not the case. So did you have any expectations?
Honestly, it did not occur to me, even though Q, like Q in the Gray, oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank on some of them now, but Q, whenever there is the lone letter or word Q, it has to do with Q. The character.
Exactly.
And this time,
just hide and Q, Cupid. I don't know if they were teasing us or if they just decided to throw those historical precedents out the window and just do their own thing.
I mean, it's technically a precedent, but I don't think there's actually a literal, in the show Bible, we must do this. And Q&A, it doesn't, questions and answers sounds funny.
But for the main character of Spock, who featured in this short, that seems kind of fitting. I don't think he would ever call it Q&A.
Maybe not, but he, did you ever know that Leonard Nimoy and John de Lancie did it too? Spock and Q.
Wasn't it called Alien Worlds or Alien Visitors?
I don't recall, but they were very entertaining. If you can find the recordings, which they're out there, that's how I listen to them. I think you can buy them probably on iTunes or something. Definitely check them out. I like the first one better.
I have them both. They were given to me by my friend Lauren as CDs, and I ripped them. And it was called Alien Voices, and there was a couple of them, and they were, as you said, hilarious. I really liked them.
But today we were talking about Q&A. And I'm not going to let myself get too sidetracked.
But why not? What else would Transporter Log be except a bunch of side quests?
This is true, but then we already record for episodes way longer than the episode itself.
Well, especially with short treks. That's right. So I'll try to give a quick TLDR on this. We knew that there were going to be some short treks set on Christopher Pike's Enterprise, and this is one of them. And it is set even earlier chronologically than Discovery. It is Spock's first day on the Enterprise. So he beams aboard and is met by number 1, of course, being reprised by the actor Rebecca Roman. And she accompanies him to a turbo lift and asks him specifically, ask me all the questions you can. And as he's doing so, they get stuck in the turbo lift for what seem to be hours. And so there's a lot of questions to be asked in that time. And they bond, eventually they escape, and that is the length and breadth of the short trek. That's pretty much it, Captain?
Yeah, that's it. A quick get into it. People are like, why don't they just beam them out? Why don't they do this? You're kind of ruining the fun. It's supposed to be just a moment where these two are bonding. A sight-to-sight
transport occurred to me as well, but that would just, as you said, that would just ruin it.
And so if you think too hard into it, you're not going to just enjoy the moment.
So I would say there was definitely a moment in this episode that was the climax, but what did you think of the episode overall before we get to that particular point?
Oh, I had a lot of fun with this one. I mean, we got to see, with this episode, they were doing a little bit of explanation of why Spock was had some emotion still in the pilot episode. Here he comes on, he's smiling as he's beaming aboard the Enterprise, and he gets on there and he's doing this like very cadet kind of, or ensign, like reporting for duty, like very loud. And we're going to see a very young Spock who's still figuring his place out in this human-centric world.
When you say when he had emotions in the pilot, you're referring to the menagerie / the cage?
Yeah, the very first episode that was aired, or I don't think it was even aired. But no, the very first episode, the one that they made canon in Discovery.
Right, and it was canon even in TOS.
Yeah, that's right. Just more canon.
It was canoner and canoner.
It was cemented.
So canon. Yeah, because even in that episode, Spock was smiling at the blue flowers, which we've mentioned in this podcast before. And he definitely had some emotions here. Like, he was just so excited for his first day on the Enterprise, which even at that point, serving under such a decorated captain as Christopher Pike must have been very exciting for him. And yeah, and Number One noticed that when he beamed aboard. And it's like, did I see you smiling? That was very disconcerting. Yeah, and he had some great questions for her as well, although I was surprised that his first question was, what is your name? Because you would think he would know everything about Enterprise, knowing who Spock is.
Well, she might keep it a closely guarded secret, because it's been, for the longest time, she was not named canonically. The books had called her something, and apparently in Discovery Season 2, Pike called her by this. I don't recall it at the moment, but it was seen as a moment where people were like not sure if maybe they just misheard him. I think it was like in an action scene. I can't recall exactly now. But here they canonically made sure everyone knew her actual name is Una.
Thank you. You know, just now you've clarified for me. I misunderstood Spock's question. I thought he was asking, when he said, what is your name? I thought he meant, who are you? Like, I thought he didn't know to whom he was speaking. But he was actually asking, I know you're number one. I know you're second in command of the Enterprise. I would like to know your actual name. I didn't realize that's what he was asking. Thank you.
Yeah. And so they cemented it, and she says it. It's on her little data pad as she's recording something as Spock gets on there. And so, yeah, now we know Una is canonically her name.
And apparently Una also has a food synthesizer protocol named after her.
Yeah. We get to explore more the Number One character in this episode as well, which I really enjoyed, because off that pilot, we know so little about her, and we saw a little bit more of her in Discovery. We know she's very meticulous, and hell, they show that here as she's narrating the intro here. She's narrating something on her pad. She pauses and says something like, "Should be arriving right now." Like 2 seconds later, there he is, and she's very meticulous in her schedule throughout the day, apparently.
Do you think, she is very meticulous in her observations of other people as well, and she shared some of her observations about Christopher Pike with Spock. Do you think she has a crush on Pike? Because I think Spock picked up on that.
Oh, they certainly alluded to it. Spock made a comment saying that she pays close attention to him, and she gets this nervous look. She kind of panics and immediately calls engineering. It's like, how much longer kind of moment.
Yeah, she was flustered, like she was cornered by that question, and she definitely wanted to escape that situation.
Now, it truly is leave it up to the viewer, but to me, it certainly implied that she felt closer to him in any case.
That's interesting. I don't think we saw that in Season 2 of Discovery, but we did see so little of this character that there's lots of blank slates to work with there.
What did you think of the Q&A scene? The montage of Q&A implied they were there for hours.
I was wondering how long that was, because Spock's questions are so detailed and lengthy, and her answers seem to be relatively curt by comparison. So they could have been there for just 1 hour, and he still could have fired off a lot of questions in that time.
For sure. He asked, she was like, I want you to be asking questions to the point of annoyance or something like that. And he's like, am I getting annoying to you? She's like, no, you're just getting deep. Something like that.
Some of the questions were, very functional regarding like warp dynamics and the like. Others seemed to be quite philosophical as well.
Yes, my favorite of a whole bunch was totally calling out Star Trek fans. Spock asked her the question that people has been talking about in communities for years. And he asks, I actually wrote it down specifically just so I can mention this. He asks her, have you ever considered that the Prime Directive is not only not ethical, but also illogical and perhaps morally indefensible? And she responds, no, Spock, I have not. And for the sake of your own sanity, might I suggest you cease doing so immediately?
Why do you think she said that? It didn't occur to me that was calling out the fans, but you're right. That is definitely a question that we have debated for years. And I don't mean you and me specifically. I just mean in fandom.
Oh, she was totally just making a nod. Like, it's when Star Trek is breaking the, third and a half. It's not quite fourth wall, but totally referencing the viewers and the fans. Like, you're thinking too much into this. Like, have some problematic, and it's used as a story device, not necessarily as a law. Even if exactly, it's that. And so, like, just have fun with it.
But in the Enterprise Season 2 episode, Dear Doctor, Captain Archer and Phlox have a very lengthy debate about what to do because there is no Prime Directive at that point, and they're trying to figure out, should we intervene and save the species of sentient beings that is dying? And you know, so those sort of debates that Spock is suggesting have occurred, and meaningfully and reasonably so.
Yeah, I was reading up on some more discussion just to make sure I was caught up, and people were like, this is kind of built in. They're trying to be, in creating this for the show, they're trying to be colonial for the show. And, that part has good merits, but also, like, at one point it's still just that the show debates for years, like, when should you not? In that episode in particular, one race was dying out, and the more or less subservient race on a planet was going to be the dominating species if nothing was done. But there's been countless ones. There's been countless episodes where captains totally disregard the Prime Directive. Kirk and Janeway are the predominant ones who would break that law or rule, law, suggestion, depending on the episode.
Yeah, and even in Season 2 of Discovery, I highly objected to the Discovery basically doing a mass experiment on the entire species of Kelpians by forcing them to evolve.
Mm-hmm.
I understand the plot reason, and it worked out great, and I was happy with the result, but coming from the perspective of the Prime Directive, I don't think they should be doing that. And also, you mentioned Janeway and Kirk, and I agree with those, but also even in Picard's era, Star Trek Insurrection, he was not involved in a Prime Directive violation directly. He didn't initiate it, but that was a civil war between those two people, and Starfleet intervened because they needed a natural resource from that planet. And so I was surprised to hear number one suggest that we shouldn't question this.
Most captains seem to kind of take it as do no harm, unless, as best you can, do no harm. But, whatever. We can have a whole episode on that and not agree or disagree on anything. I said, yep, that is a point. Yep, that is a different point.
I realized that I just inadvertently got involved in the exact kind of debate that number one was telling us not to have.
Exactly.
I'm sorry. I guess I just proved her point, though. Yes, that was my goal.
Right, and you did well.
Well, thank you. Let's talk about our favorite moment, or at least my favorite moment. I hope it was yours, too.
Yeah, what was that?
There was a scene where Spock was called out on his smiling, and Una basically said, I would never tell you not to be yourself, and I understand that you are half human, but you also, if you are striving for command, you need to keep your freaky to yourself. Well, there are a couple of points to that. One is, I kind of thought Spock had already learned that when Baby Burnham basically yelled at him and called him a monster, and you should not try to be human. But he apparently is still struggling with his emotions. And also, they called him out that he was on the command track, which I thought was interesting because we do eventually see Captain Spock. And in the Kelvin timeline, at this point, I think he's already a commander. When he and Kirk first met, he was a commander helping run the Kobayashi Maru. And here, he's only an ensign. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, so he and Una connect on that level, and Una says, let me show you my freaky. And I really thought this was going to be the point where we see the fan theory that she is not human.
I didn't know. I don't think I've ever heard that. Or if I have, I've long forgotten it.
I think it's mostly in the novels that she is extremely long-lived, and that can explain why, for example, she looks like Troy's mother, for example. But
I like it.
But to confess, I haven't actually read those books, so I don't know the details of the theory, except what you might find on Memory Beta.
Gotcha.
But what were you expecting her to reveal in that moment?
I really did not know. I had no clue, to be honest. She got very close to him when she said like, okay, or something like that. And like the scene was cut. Like, the two characters are standing very close to each other. I didn't think it was going to be anything like a kiss or anything like that, but I think it almost felt like they were alluding to it. A very intimate moment is what it was. But I had no idea what she was going to do. And all of a sudden she breaks out into Pirates of Penzance.
I know, she starts singing Gilbert and Sullivan. Like, apparently her freaky is that she's a Broadway musical aficionado.
Well, we don't know specifically. Either she likes to sing, or she knows that song very well, or she is a fan of the what was it, like a minor operatic? I don't know what people call it, a play. Maybe she loves plays. We don't know exactly what her freaky is, but she's really good at singing that song, which I can't remember the title of it, but everyone knows it.
But it's okay for Starfleet officers to have hobbies. I mean, even Chief O'Brien loved putting ships in bottles, and that didn't scare anybody. But then again, he wasn't on the command track either. But we know Picard loves horses, and so why can't you be on the command track and like Gilbert and Sullivan?
She didn't say you can't. She just she has this appearance. She says she told him she'd never tell Spock to stop smiling. Just be aware of how one is perceived by comrades. She's very, we know she's always very straight cut, very precise in what she says, kind of thing. And she's the one who gets the job done. And she doesn't like to let loose in front of other people.
That is definitely fitting with her character. And when you put it like that, I can see how, for some reason, she feels the need to be... Well, you know what? We actually saw that same thing with Picard, now that I think of it, where he never joined the poker table until All Good Things, the series finale at the end of season 7.
Yeah.
And maybe she's doing that same thing, just trying to be somewhat cold and aloof, not to be mean or cruel, but just to maintain that professional distance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That actually scene was my favorite as well. I wrote that down, and telling Spock to learn to keep his freaky butt to himself.
I really liked the conclusion to that scene where they ended up singing and laughing together.
Yeah. That was great. That was great.
I did not see that coming from a mile away, because she had just told him, keep your freaky to yourself. And I don't think in Discovery we've ever seen Spock laugh. And, even in the original series when he did, it was very rare and often due to the result of some sort of an alien or biological influence. And so to just see him let down his barrier for his commanding officer who he just met on the first day on the job, I honestly can't say if it was in character, but I loved it. And I thought it was a wonderful moment between these two characters.
Oh yeah, they were totally sharing a moment. They'd been stuck in there for a while and just being intimate on a close level, like not sexually, just intimate closely, sharing the whole thing here. And yeah, no, it made sense to me. I didn't expect it, but it made sense to me. Because then he starts singing back to her, because she ends and she almost ends her song, kind of pauses quite abruptly, and she's like, "Oh, was that too far?" And then he starts singing up, and then they laugh.
It's great. We'll never know, but I wonder if he already knew that song or if he was just parroting her.
Yeah.
And then, once they get rescued, she tells him, I want a hole in your memory where this happened. The person who I was watching the short trek with said, why? Why would you want him to forget that? It was so wonderful.
Essentially just telling him, don't you ever repeat this or I will kill you.
But even when they were on the bridge, that memory gap...
Pretend it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Is what she means.
Yeah, but she acted like she hadn't even escorted him to the bridge.
Uh-huh.
Whereas, clearly there were people who rescued her and can see that they were together for a while.
Uh-huh. Well, apparently Pike didn't know that.
Right, but what I mean was that number one was putting forth a falsehood that was very easily disproven.
Yeah, she's just, it was, just, don't you dare tell a soul. It's just like a sibling, beating each other up or something like that. Or, I don't know, I can't think of a context. Just like telling someone, don't you dare tell a soul. Everyone knows you had a moment. Most people know, you were together or whatever like that. But no, I didn't see anything wrong or funky about that.
And they shared some knowing glances on the bridge, which was nice.
Uh-huh.
Especially when Pike asked Spock, do Vulcans ever feel awe? And Spock said, we do, but we keep it to ourselves. And he looked right at her, and I think he was in awe of her and her ability to relate to him.
Oh, that's exactly what they were pushing. Exactly what they were saying.
I like that. Anything else about this short trek?
There was one more thing.
Go ahead.
People were getting up in arms about the uniforms because of timing of Discovery. And era and whatnot. Don't worry about it. Just enjoy it.
They were wearing TOS uniforms, right?
Yeah, but Discovery. There was also the timeline of Discovery with their Discovery uniforms, and I think Pike had made a comment when Enterprise comes on, like, "Yeah, we've got the new uniforms. What do you think?" And I think people would just don't focus on that. Just enjoy the episode for what it is.
Oh, I see what you mean. So I thought the Discovery uniforms were the new ones.
No, it was the TOS ones.
Oh, I forgot about that. That's interesting. Huh. I wonder how long before Discovery this episode was set.
Yeah, I don't know the exact years or whatever like that, but Spock's early career has never been really, at least in the Prime universe, never really closely explained, and so we don't know exactly how long he was on there, but as an ensign, but who knows, whatever.
Well, I strongly suggest you not ask yourself that question, and you put it out of your mind immediately.
It doesn't matter. I love Star Trek. I love knowing facts.
And I love talking about it with you, which we will be doing again shortly because we are behind in our short treks. We have another episode to review, but we'll be doing that in a separate episode of Transporter Lock.
No, I really enjoyed this one. I'm happy to see more Pike. I'm happy to see more number one. And I'm also happy to see more Spock.
Yeah, we had heard that they hadn't broken down that set, and I was wondering to what degree we would see Captain Pike. And the answer is little of Pike himself, but definitely the Enterprise is in full force here, so that was fun to see.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, a brief apology if there was any background noise. I'm actually here in Rotterdam in the Netherlands with my coworker. So this is the farthest apart we've ever been, Sabriel. 7 hours apart.
Yeah. Wow.
It's almost like an episode of Star Trek. I can tell you what the future is like.
Yeah, tell me that. Be like Australians and have good integrity and don't tell the future.
I will probably claim to be Canadian while I'm here because that will get me a better reception. And I'm glad I watched the short treks before I got here because they don't have short treks in the EU.
Unless you find backup manners.
Which we don't do on this show. All right. Well,
okay.
There is no I in Borg.
There is no we in you.
All right, Captain. Until next time.
Hit it.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave a review on iTunes and keep your hailing frequencies open by following us on Twitter @TransporterLock or subscribing to our podcast and email newsletter at transporterlock.com.